majorly, which is the security issues. And this is something we mentioned since last night. I even have to commend and thank President Cyril Ramaphosa for not only his presence but also for his interest in the issues of stability and security in the Eastern DRC. So we really focused on those things, and he demonstrated burning desire to support the DRC. And we are even aiming at having bilateral agreements in addition to what is already existing at the level of SADC regarding solidarity between states when one is attacked. We are even undertaking to have a bilateral agreement, DRC, South Africa, regarding these issues. But we will find out more about this in the coming days and the coming weeks, because, of course, these are decisions that should be based upon regulations that will be from our both respective parliaments. DRC has sufficiently talked about sectors that we focused on, because here it is all about, the key thing is that we should create an nexus, Pretoria, Kinshasa, which will be will have outcomes, positive outcomes across the entire Southern African region, because those two big countries have assets, considerable assets. I will not come back to talk about assets of the two countries, and they have to be the triggers for development of the region, and they even have the capacity to do that. So this is the outlines of what we have just said, both my counterparts and myself. And we also met sometime later when we received the reports of the work done by respective delegations, and we even realized that, of course, this our thoughts were really translated in the discussions and reports that we saw from the delegations. So this means that we are ready at this moment to undertake a stronger relation and a more effective relation that will give yield outcomes that will be really beneficial for both of our states. This is what I can say at this moment. Excellency, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa.
Cyril Ramaphosa, welcome in the DRC. So this is your first visit in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So do you have a message, any message for Congolese people?
Well, thank you very much. It's a real joy and a pleasure to be here in the DRC, and also to have been so warmly welcomed by President Tshisekedi, as well as the people of the DRC. We value the relationship between South Africa and the DRC greatly. It's a relationship that dates way back and has its the strong foundation from the commitment that Nelson Mandela demonstrated towards the DRC right in the beginning and the troubled days. And we were overjoyed when things started falling into place, and we have stayed as a keen partner of the DRC throughout the years. And our visit here, this 12th Binational Commission, is a further consolidation of that relationship and the commitments and the decisions that were made by our respective parties. And let me tell you that our ministers and officials worked extremely hard in the past 3 or 4 days in preparation for this Binational Commission meeting, and we've arrived at 81 decisions around important and fundamental issues of consolidating and cementing our partnership. That should tell everyone that this is indeed a very special partnership between the two countries. And I couldn't agree more with President Tshisekedi when he says it's a Pretoria-Kinshasa nexus that links the two countries together, and the agreements as well as the decisions that have been taken just help to cement that relationship and solidify it. As earlier said, we are willing, prepared, and always ready to support the DRC as we have done in the past and will continue doing so, even in its most challenging times, such as security, as well as its economic development. As President Tshisekedi says, on the issue of security, South Africa has been heavily invested and heavily present in the DRC on the eastern side, and we are also going to strengthen that relationship by having a bilateral agreement on security and defense. That is going to be finalized, and I'm really pleased that our ministers of defense have had really deep discussions around this. But the economy is another area of cooperation between the two countries. Our two countries have a lot of resources that are attracting everyone in the world. And we have said that through our ministers of minerals and energy, we should find a way in which we upgrade our cooperation, and the idea of our top-class people together to talk about what we should do with our minerals. The DRC has enormous endowments when it comes to minerals, particularly strategic and critical minerals. South Africa also has the same, and a number of other countries. And the idea that we should have a minerals commission which will assist all of us, particularly in SADC, to manage our minerals correctly so that they are not plundered by those from outside our region and continent, so that we establish policies, so that we are able to attract investments together to beneficiate our minerals, so that we no longer see our minerals going out of our countries as stones and sand. We should see us exporting products made in our own countries out of the minerals that we produce. Trade is another important area of cooperation. Aviation is another important area, and agriculture is another important area. Transportation, the building of roads in our two countries. So this relationship is so rich, and we want to make it even more rich so that we get business people from both South Africa and the DRC dealing with each other. We will be going to a business forum, President Tshisekedi and I, after we leave here. And so the two countries have a lot that they can exploit and develop. Minister Pando spoke about the Grand Inga project. Now, this was signed in 2013, and it has just been lying dead. Through this BNC, we have now recommitted ourselves to reviving the Grand Inga project. I spoke about it in Europe a few days ago and called upon the world, particularly the financing institutions, to help fund this mega project. This we see as a continental project because the power that will be generated from the Grand Inga is going to supply energy and electricity to many countries around the DRC. South Africa certainly is going to benefit, and so will a number of other countries. So we stand in great support of the Grand Inga project, and we're very grateful that the DRC came up with the idea of this project, and we support the DRC. We're going to be joining the DRC as well to make this project come alive, because it has been sleeping and dead for quite a long time. So our presence here is a great success in that the relationship is now going to be turbocharged. It's going to be put at a much higher level, and we're going to be able to get things done. And the other important thing is that we want to go beyond talking and get into action and implementation. So our ministers are going to meet in what we call mid-term processes before President Tshisekedi comes to South Africa for the 13th binational. We will have a mid-term. The ministers will meet, review what we have all decided to do, and take activity forward. So I am personally very pleased to be here, and I want to thank our ministers, President Tshisekedi, on both sides. I know they've been working very hard, and they were not sleeping or resting on the banks of the Congo River. They were really working, and we thank them for that.
Thank you, Mr. President. So thank you, Mr. President, for these opening remarks. We're going to take some questions from journalists. Yeah, on n'a pas fini. Alors, s'il vous plaît, mesdames et messieurs de la presse, de poser des questions qui n'ont pas été dites, on va dire, dans le communiqué final, parce que le communiqué final, on est d'accord, a été
question beyond the final communique. You should now come back with questions related to the final communique, which was very informative and clear. I want to start with Mr. Chris Ochamongima, who is going to speak on behalf of SABC Africa.
My first question goes to you, President Cyril Ramaphosa. You have mentioned that South Africa and the DRC have signed a number of bilateral agreements aimed at achieving the shared prosperity of both people. But you cannot have prosperity when there's a conflict. And you mentioned that there's a security agreement that you're going to come up with. Now, there's a widely held view in the international community and the East African region that this conflict, the one by the M23, should be resolved through dialogue. The DRC government isn't willing to have any dialogue with the M23 because they consider them terrorists who are supported by Rwanda. And the UN group of experts recently confirmed that. I would like to know what South Africa will be doing differently to try and help the DRC resolve this problem that has brought so much suffering to the Congolese people. My other question is, one question to President Tshisekedi? Okay.
Mr. President, I want to ask you the question because a few months ago you invited SADC armed troop to address war issues in the DRC. Now, your population expected to see those, but they did not see them. But when will they come, and what will be their mandate? Please explain in French so that I can really we can really capture your view on this. Thank you.
He and I had wide-ranging discussions on many issues, and we also shared our common view on the resolution of conflicts, not only on our continent, but globally as well. And we agreed that the best way that is tried and tested of resolving conflicts is through dialogue, through when people sit down and are able to find ways of negotiating. And the conflict that's going on the east of DRC is a conflict that is being processed, that's being addressed by our regional organization, as well as by the AU. And SADC is also involved, as is the East African Community, as is the AU, and all those processes involve dialogue, negotiation, conflict resolution. It involves people who are appointed and chosen to intervene in those dialogues. President Lorenzo of Angola is involved, and the various structures of the AU are also involved. And all that is about negotiation, my good friend. It's about dialogue. And President Tshisekedi could never be against resolving conflicts through this tried and tested method of resolving conflicts. I was also able to share with President Tshisekedi the other initiative that African leaders from 7 countries have engaged upon to try and see how best the conflict that is thousands of kilometers away from our continent can also be resolved. And that too is underpinned by dialogue and negotiation. And that is the message that we also took to Ukraine and Russia. And we told them that this is the tried and tested method that we utilize on our continent to resolve conflicts. So that being the best method to resolve conflicts cannot be rejected by anyone. And indeed, it is also embraced by leaders in the SADC region, as also demonstrated on many occasions when President Tshisekedi has briefed SADC leaders about this conflict as well. So thank you very much.
Oui, avant de répondre
Before answering the question, please allow me to come back on what my colleague, my counterpart, President Cyril Ramaphosa just said, to also answer your question, the question that you asked. I would like to say this. This is the first time for me to hear that we do not like to discuss with the Rwanda, engage with the Rwanda. I should remind that Rwanda has never recognized or has always told lies on the truth of his aggression against the DRC, has always presented the issue as a domestic issue, like a domestic issue for the Congo. And the M23 consider them as Congolese who revolted because of what is happening in their community. But everybody knows today that this is lies. And Rwanda is still not accepting that and pretending that they are not aggressing the DRC in spite of all the proven proofs, all the documents that are attesting and certifying their aggression. In such a particular situation, you're going to realize that it is very difficult to engage and discuss with the Rwanda because they do not accept their role. They should not belittle us by sending a small little group of people that only want to come and discuss with the government, with such as us, a legitimate government, a recognized government, internationally speaking. So they send some of those nominees and they want us to engage in discussing with them and to just go back to that's why the Rwanda would never like to engage in discussions, and this is the reason why the DRC is against the idea of discussing with those so-called nominees that they send us to settle this issue of security. Now, our opinion is that since the first meeting aiming at discussing this crisis in Nairobi, and for the bilateral organization that the AU commended, there is a plan that we all have to validate, and that was incorporating ceasefire, withdrawal, and finally and the incorporation in the disarmament, demobilization, and reinsertion program. So this is what we're asking, and this is what we're expecting. And now to move on to your second question, I criticized, but I did not reject the East African force. I criticized their behavior towards these agreements that I just mentioned, which are very clear with specific dates and withdrawal modalities and the feasibility of the implementation of this agreement. But unfortunately, the East African contingent, when they come, they did not observe it. We noticed that in the areas where the Ugandan and Kenyan contingent, when they were deployed, they were sort of working along with the rebels. They were enabling them to collect tax and things, which was even not done by those from Burundi. We brought that on record, and since that time, we engaged in discussions, in frank discussions, whereby we said things, and additional modalities have been agreed upon, and now we have new provisions, and by September we will see if those things will be implemented, and from that time we will redefine things based on the way things will play out. Now, regarding the SADC forces, I believe that maybe we do not have a good understanding. We did not ask SADC support. You should know that within SADC there is solidarity duty inside. We do not even have to request aid, because it should be natural within SADC. When a member is attacked, the others are duty bound to provide solidarity, and this is what was explained and expressed by SADC by inviting to this Troika meeting, which is peace security mechanism of SADC, the PSC framework, so that I can explain the situation of my country, the DRC, and thanks to that, based on solidarity duty, SADC expressed to desire to come to the DRC because they were this was a duty and responsibility as part of our charter. Since the time, we now have to implement that. As you know, as I said, we have the East African forces that is in place. We first of all have to experience how they will behave, and the SADC forces are still on standby, but still at the disposal of the DRC to intervene whenever this will be time to do. Last time in Rwanda, we agreed in the presence of the AU and representative of other regional communities to provide the DRC the ability to coordinate all those decisions, the management of all this crisis. This should say that this means that the day the DRC will decide and it will give permission to SADC to deploy their contingents here. For this time, we are still working with the East African forces, and we're observing how the disengagement of those Rwandan supported forces will come to an end. At this time, we have no comment to add upon that, and we will advise in a few time to come. Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Gards from Radio Okapi.
Merci.
Thank you. This question is addressed to President Felix Tshisekedi. Mr. President, this great BNC between the DRC and South Africa, or the bilateral cooperation between the two countries exists for since long ago, which has so many agreements. What is what stake do you take based on what has been done as part of those partnership, and only the result of this stock stake that we're going to know what we can say about the current status of relation between the two countries, and what are you expecting from South Africa based on economic and security aspects? Well, for reports, we cannot give a final or definitive reports at this time, as the relations are still continued. All I can say is that until now, what has happened was good and fair, but we can do better. And this is what we are currently doing now. We always when you talk about international relations, it is always possible to make things better, and this is what we focused on this time. You heard, as President Cyril Ramaphosa said, that thanks to the meetings between our senior officials, we insisted on the fact that we're going to follow up and proceed with the implementation thereof, because those resolutions have always been taken and several times, and today we will try our level best so that this can come true. And basically, majority of economic exchange that Africa does is always outside of the continent. The exchange rates in intra-Africa is about 16%, if I think, and this is very insignificant, while Africa has more about 2 billion inhabitants. And if we address the issue of continental integration, I think we'll become an economic power that will challenge with and be very competitive towards other economic powers across the world. So we really need to emphasize more on the cooperation between both our countries. I recently talked about Pretoria-Kinshasa Act, which means between the axis. It means between those two countries. It is all about two potentially rich countries, and which have a good demography, and that can use their influence to boost the entire Southern African zone and take it forward in terms of development. And of course, this will require more exchange, and also basically the follow-up and the monitoring of all the resolutions that we take now. This is the reason why I am expecting more from South Africa, because we said things here, and I believe that we will do things differently than the way things were done previously. Ladies and gentlemen from the press, we have a huge program for the both head of states, and as I just said, the final communique that we're going to avail for you incorporates all the answers to your questions. We're going to have only 2 more questions. Oscar Mbal, RTNC news director.
Merci, madame.
Thank you, madam. I have a short question to address to the DRC president regarding Grand Inga. The South African minister emphasized on this program, this great project. Even President Ramaphosa highlighted this. This is to demonstrate the interest to this, demonstrated to this Inga project. Excellency President of the Republic, there is an Australian developer on Inga project that you discussed with in Davos. I would like to know, is there room for everybody, for every country in such an enormous project? Because at a certain time you were a little bit hesitant on, you were not okay with exclusivity contract, because other countries are interested in this, and other South Africa and as well as other countries are interested in this. Yes, and I continue to refuse exclusivity. The person you mentioned knows my position, because since the first time I discussed with him, I told him that I would like this Inga project to be an international project. It should be multi-stakeholder project. It should be open and accessible for many various partnerships, but basically African. I really highlighted this, and you will hear that wherever Mr. Angro Forest mentioned about this Grand Inga project, he mentioned saying that our project is open to any partnerships. But it figures that I think I happen to have the impression that at the level of the developer, as you just said, the Fortescue firm did not meet the conditions that we were expecting for him. But as the project was not an exclusive project, it was not dedicated to only one partnership, Fortescue, so we felt free to engage with other potential partners, and today I can say that South Africa expressed not only its interest, but also its commitment. I also, a few weeks ago, had discussions with World Bank representatives, and I can tell you that on that side, the World Bank is also interested in coming back to this project, because they were put aside for reasons that I ignore. This happened before I took the office as the president of the DRC, so I cannot say more about it. But now they have expressed their interest to rejoin this project. So the project is therefore ready to move forward, and I might conclude saying that we have the demonstrated interest by the Republic of China, because during my discussion with Mr. Xi Jinping, he also mentioned that. But I also believe that all of them need some sort of architecture. They need some sort of financial structure of this project, so in order to know the capacity of each and everybody to contribute to this project. So there is enthusiasm that this project, Great Inga, will really be implemented in a few time to come. Mr. Chair, we're going to take a last question addressed to you. There is a couple of questions addressed here. That's addressed to President Ramaphosa. He is the visitor. You should not address all the questions to me. That's the reason why I wanted to do things this way. He is our host. He is our guest of honor. We should really care for him. So we're going to have a question from BBC.
Merci beaucoup. La
Thank
question
you.
va s'adresser directement aux
The
deux
question will be
présidents.
addressed
C'est
to
par
both
rapport au visa.
presidents.
Tout
It's
à l'heure, le
regarding
vice-premier
visa.
ministre et
The
ministre
Vice
des Affaires
Deputy Prime
étrangères
Minister,
avait
Minister of
évoqué
Foreign Affairs, just
certaines
talked about
exemptions en ce qui concerne l'obtention de
exemptions
visa.
regarding
Il a
visa
cité une certaine
granting.
catégorie, mais on le sait
He
aujourd'hui en
named
RDC,
some
pour
categories
obtenir
of
un
people,
visa
but we know
de
here in
l'Afrique du
DRC
Sud, c'est tout
to
un calvaire. La
receive
population
a
s'en
visa
plaint.
for South
Alors,
Africa,
est-ce
it
qu'on
is
peut s'attendre à
really
l'issue de
difficult,
renforcement
and
de
people are
ces
complaining.
relations
Can we
RDC-Afrique
expect
du
that
Sud,
thanks
s'attendre, on
to
va dire,
this
à un allègement de certaines
improvement
conditions pour
of
avoir
South
le
Africa
visa pour
DRC
aller en Afrique du
relation
Sud?
can
Voilà
make
ma
things
question.
easy
Merci.
to grant visa to go to South Africa from the DRC? That's my question.
Thank you very much. Yes, the issue of visas did come up under the broad topic of immigration. And as you correctly say, the relationship between DRC and South Africa is not only improving, it is at a very high level because we work very well together on a number of issues, ranging from security and going to be improving trade and investment, as well as visas. And we have both recognized that it is important to allow the movement of people as well as goods between the two countries. And to that end, we are going to be focusing a great deal of attention to the visa regime between the two countries. You all know, I mean, people do get diplomatic visas, they do get business visas, and we now need to be looking more closely at how we can enhance the whole process of granting visas for people from the DRC to come to South Africa. We do go through a process, not only with the DRC, but with many other countries, and that process is underway, and we are going to be addressing this matter. What I can tell you is that this matter was raised very, very prominently in our discussions, and we are going to continue in various ways to look at how we can make it practical. The willingness, the intention, and the objective of making sure that there's free movement of people between our two countries is there. We just need to look at the modalities and the practical side of it. So I just want to leave a hopeful message to people in the DRC that on South Africa's side, yes, it's not that we are not willing to open up, we just need to look at the various modalities and the various processes. So when we next our mid-year term review, as well as our next BNC, we will have made a great deal of progress in that regard. Thank you. So you don't like to applaud that?
Thank you, Mr. President. And one more, la dernière question, Madame Rachel Kizita, Actu 30.
We'll have the last question from Madame Kizita.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank
Je
you
m'adresse
so
au
much.
président sud-africain.
To go through the election process, we have always supported all democratic processes in the DRC and calling for stability of the elections and their success. With the last one, we did exactly that. With this one, we will do exactly the same, and we are prepared to give practical support as well in every way that is possible. And we call on the people of the DRC to ensure that they hold peaceful elections that will have a credible outcome, as to be welcomed and recognized by all. And when you do that, you will be entrenching democracy in the DRC and demonstrating to all in the world that the DRC, one, is stable, two, is democratic, and is seeking to be a very, very prosperous and successful country. So we support the elections and hope that they will go well, and our support is unconditional. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Excellence, Messieurs les Présidents de la République.
Thank you, Excellency, Mr.
Merci beaucoup.
President of the Republic. Thank you so
Alors
much.
pour
Merci.
la
Now,
presse, les
for
bus
the
sont au
press,
parking si vous
we
voulez aller au
have
Palais du
buses
Peuple.
on the
Merci.
parking lots if you want to head for the Palais du Peuple, which will be the next venue.